Today, God taught me that I was living with envy for most of my life. I hid it away in pride, and I hid it away in anger, and I hid it away in sexual fantasy. I hid away envy because I felt worse about it than all these other things. And there was a very well-meaning pastor who told me years ago, I mentioned that I was struggling with envy with a person. And the response, I think I know what they were trying to say, but I took it in a different way. It was like, well, we can't just pray about it and it go away. Now, I think that what they were saying is this is probably going to be a process, but unfortunately the way that I took that, and maybe this is what they meant, but the way that I took that was, this isn't something that God works on, this is something that you work on. Now, I've learned that there is nothing that I work on my own. The Holy Spirit leads us into all truth, and God's the one who makes us into a new creature. We can't make ourselves into a new creature. So again, I think that it was a miscommunication in that aspect. I don't think that what I heard is necessarily what he meant in that case, but I ended up just stuffing it. I just felt bad, and I was like, oh, this is just one of those things you can't deal with. It just has to go away at some point magically, versus God dealing with it. And so God went through this pretty intense healing process with me, pointing out a lot of different areas where I didn't even realize that I'd been dealing with envy, but he was like, how do you feel about this? And one of the big things that he pointed out was that any place that I look at somebody else and say, I would do so much better if I had what they have, that was envy and pride. And I was kind of oh gosh. And so God did do like a really supernatural like work in me, just bringing up all these things to where after the fact, like I was starting to catch all these areas that I realized the foundation was envy in all sorts of little things, to the extent of doing extra work because I wanted to be able to catch up or feel like I was doing as well as other people, or even simple things that are good to do, but like it was out of envy. Doing the dishes, I was like, well, I want to be as good as those people who have clean dishes, versus I like clean dishes and it's good to not have dirty dishes because it gets nasty at some point. All sorts of little things that had these roots of envy. So I saw a bit of a vision of God like clearing all that out. He did a lot of work and then filling that same spot with joy. And he was like, hey, the joy of the Lord is your strength. Envy's not meant to be your strength. The joy of the Lord is your strength. And God's giving me a metaphor of a head towel. And a head towel is useful if your hair is super wet and you have a lot of hair. But the thing is, if you keep the head towel on forever, your hair actually at some point will just keep all the dampness back there and you're not actually going to solve the purpose of the towel. And so I was putting all of this emotion on top of envy, all of these ideas, all of these thoughts, hoping that I will get it all out, and never releasing that and never actually getting down into the root. Because to me, the envy, the wet hair, was way worse than having this giant damp towel on my head for all the time. When God brought this up, it was not shaming or Josh, how dare you? It was like, okay, let's have this conversation now. Let's go through this, and I'm excited to see how this continues for me. And sometimes, yeah, God just brings up a really huge root. And what he was telling me is that this is one of the biggest shifts in health in my life, even though I've had like some pretty big things that he's walked me through before. God brings those things up and walks with us through them. And in my case here, I'm very grateful he did this miraculous, quick work that I now have to keep receiving and walking and like going to that root of joy rather than trying to go to envy, which he's like pulled out. So it almost feels like I can't go back where I was. Like, what's going on? Like, I recognize that my instinct is to go back to this thing that God's removed. And so there's this brief moment of confusion for, oh, I need to go to joy now. That needs to be like where I'm going for source. And if it means that I'm doing things differently, that's a good thing.